This New York Rangers team clearly has many flaws and problems with it as of right now, and I definitely expect Chris Drury to be looking to make multiple upgrades this offseason with this roster, as there are, like I said, many holes and kind of many flaws and problems with this team. But one area of need that I think is potentially the biggest area to address and that needs an upgrade desperately, and that is the left-handed defense side of things for the Rangers. I don't think they're obviously going to go out there and rehaul the entire left side, but they definitely need to go out there and add in at least one really good top four caliber left-handed defenseman to this team. Right now, the Rangers have guys like, of course, K'Andre Miller, who is a current RFA, who I've made some videos about talking about his possible new contract, as well as kind of talking about what a potential trade could look like as well. So if you haven't checked that video out from yesterday already, definitely go look at it there. I had a nice little mock trade to kind of take a look at there involving K'Andre. So the Rangers have K'Andre, of course, who, like I said, could re-sign or could possibly also end up getting traded away. The Rangers also have guys like Carson Soucy, who has one more year left under contract after he was picked up at this past trade deadline. And the team also has a guy like Matthew Robertson, who was a prospect, a bit of a sample size at the end of last season there, but I'm not quite sure is ready for a full-time kind of NHL role. And then, of course, you have Urho Vakanainen, who is a solid kind of number 6 or 7 defenseman, but I don't think is much more than that. So in my opinion, having him going into next season as your kind of number 7 guy is probably what's ideal, but we'll have to wait and see kind of what Mike Sullivan and the rest of the coaching staff and, of course, Chris Drury end up deciding to do. But my point being, in this video, I think this team has an absolute major need. And I think, like I said, there's multiple areas of need to kind of find upgrades for, but the biggest one is on that left-handed side of the defense. I think that is the kind of clear biggest issue with this team and the biggest problem. And yes, some of the coaching staff can definitely help some of these defensive flaws, but I think adding in a guy like a Vladislav Gavrikov, for example, or even an Ivan Provorov could really be exactly kind of what this team needs on the back end. And I don't think this decor would instantly transform from like a bottom 10 one, you could say, from this past season there to a kind of top 5 or top 10 decor next season. But what I am saying is if you add in one of these guys here, Gavrikov or a Provorov, that could definitely turn this team right around and kind of get them back towards being at least a top half kind of team defensively, potentially, especially if the coaching staff that is coming in here and, Mike Sullivan's assistants and all that kind of stuff, they can be, quality coaches for this team, then I don't see why this team can't get back on track there, because I think Phil Housley and the way things were going with the system and the players, things just were not going well at all last season there. I think there were some major flaws and issues, clearly. So maybe getting that new coaching staff in there with another new player or two, especially a high-end kind of guy like a Gavrikov or a Provorov, can really be that kind of difference that this team really needs. And that's kind of why I'm saying at minimum, bare minimum, they have to go out there and add in one more top 4 caliber defenseman, because just switching up the coaching staff there and maybe the system a bit as well, that's not going to fix this team defensively. There are some major flaws, and I don't think adding in, one of those guys, Provorov or Gavrikov, is going to completely fix all the problems, because that's just not going to happen. But if you do go out there, you add in one of these guys, and now you have on, let's say, like the top pair, you got Foxy. On the next pair, maybe you've got, let's say, Provorov or Gavrikov. Now you've got some really solid kind of depth there, right? Now you have 2 great pairs potentially where, let's say you've got in the top pair there, K'Andre Miller, let's say he re-signs in this scenario. You got Foxy on the right side there. The second pair, you've got Gavrikov or Provorov, whichever one we end up signing in this hypothetical scenario. On the right side there, you got, let's say, Braden Schneider. And then on the third pair, you've got Carson Soucy or Urho Vakanainen as that third pair left-handed defenseman. The other one ends up being that kind of 7th guy. And on the right side there, you've got Will Borgen. So I don't think that decor is that bad. I actually think it's solid there. The back end and the kind of, the bottom of that definitely could use a little work maybe, but I think that's not too bad of a decor overall. And yes, ideally this team goes out there and adds in, multiple kind of great defensemen of this caliber, but I just don't think that's quite realistic enough, especially, if they aren't looking to get rid of all 3 of Soucy, K'Andre, and Kreider. That's the only kind of possible way I could see this team actually being able to add in kind of somewhat 2 quality guys like that who are true kind of top 4 caliber guys. That's the only possible way. And even then, it still would be difficult to kind of make happen if you want us to go out there and add another guy or 2 on the forward side of things. So I think there's definitely a lot of question marks with this team still. They have a lot of moves to make, a lot of decisions to make as well, because as of right now, right, we don't know. Maybe Keandre does stay, maybe he doesn't. And that's going to be a massive kind of decision for this team to make, because if you're trading him away, then you're getting back some assets, and we don't know exactly what those would be, because maybe you're trading, Keandre for a quality guy, kind of like I talked about in yesterday's video, then that mock trade there, or maybe you're going out there and you're getting some picks and kind of young players or prospects to where you're just kind of opening up that cap space to go out there and then spend some of that money that you'd be saving instead of having to pay a guy like Keandre and use that money on a guy like Gavrikov or Provorov, right? So there are a lot of different scenarios here. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Soucy is a guy who, maybe does get traded, maybe he doesn't, but he does have a cap at $3.25 million, I believe. So that's a decent chunk of change there, right? If you get rid of that money and you open up all that there, you don't retain any money, you don't take back a contract in a trade, hypothetically, with Soucy, you're opening up an extra 3.25, which that is a lot of money. That's a good chunk of change there. So I just don't know exactly what the plan is going to be as of right now. I have no idea kind of what teams are possibly interested in a guy like, Keandre Miller. How does Mike Sullivan and his kind of, new coaching staff potentially feel about a guy like Keandre? Do they have the belief in him to kind of keep him around here and finally turn him into that kind of good, consistent top 4 caliber defenseman? Or do they see kind of the flaws and some of the problems that he's kind of continued to have over the years? I don't know what their kind of thoughts are going to be on him. And I'm sure Mike Sullivan will have some kind of say in that scenario there and kind of what happens. I'll guess at least a little bit there. I'm sure him and Chris are going to be talking about, some of those players there, even a guy like Carson Soucy as well. Does Mike Sullivan want to have that guy on his team for next season there? Because, like I said, you do trade him away, you're opening up a good amount of money there. There's a lot of question marks with this decor especially, and it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens there, because if a guy like, I've kind of talked about in the past as well, if a guy like Braden Schneider could finally take that step up in his game and become that true kind of game in and game out top 4 caliber guy, then that would be such a huge kind of impact for this team, right? But if he just kind of stays at the level he's been at there, and same thing with Keandre, if we kind of re-sign him, then this team's not a whole lot better, although maybe they still do add in a guy like a Gavrikov or a Provorov, which that's great and all. But I still don't think this team will be quite ready to kind of really make that push for the cup with having guys like Schneider and Keandre and Soucy, Urho, and Borgen as some of your kind of defensemen down there. All those kind of guys I don't think can be altogether a part of a kind of team that really goes on a run there to win that cup. I just don't think that's realistic at all. So I'm hopeful we finally see some kind of big steps up from guys like Braden Schneider, like Keandre if he does come back there, because they can have a major impact on this team. And if the Rangers can finally figure things out there and kind of develop these guys, then that could be the kind of missing pieces for this team. And a guy like Braden Schneider, I've always thought could be that true kind of game in and game out top 4 caliber defenseman, a second pairing caliber guy who just plays a good defensive game there, can put up 20, 25 points per season, whatever. That's not what's important there with his game, but just playing a good, reliable defensive game there, decent puck mover, can lay the body, can fight if he has to, stick up for teammates, be a bit of a tough player, but just be a mainly kind of good shutdown defensive guy, help kill penalties, and just bring a bit of physicality as well. I always thought he could be at least that kind of a player, on the second pairing. I think he's about there, but I don't think we're seeing it kind of game in and game out there of him truly being that legit kind of top 4 caliber guy, that serious kind of number 3 and number 4 kind of guy. So if we can see that more consistently, and same thing with a guy like Keandre, this team can really kind of flip things around quite quickly. But obviously it's much easier said than done to have, 2 of your young guys there who haven't quite taken that step yet, finally take that step, especially with an organization who just have clearly not done a good job over the last long while of developing players into their actual kind of, full potential, right? Most of these guys who the Rangers have drafted over the past, decade or so, we could say, definitely have not kind of panned out for the most part there to their potential. Some guys have for sure, and some guys have been a bit of steals and stuff. I mean, Pavel Buchnevich, right? That was a great draft pick, obviously no longer with the team, but you know what I'm saying there. Some picks they've hit on for sure, but some they've definitely swung and missed on. Vitaly Kravtsov, Elias Anderson, just to name a couple there. So there's obviously some big flaws and issues with this team and organization as a whole, but what I'm trying to get at here in this video is I do think there is kind of light at the end of the tunnel there with this team, and you add in a piece like a Gavrikov or Provorov, and you add another piece or two on the forward side of things, and just like that, this team can be a lot better, especially with that new coaching staff, and they may not be quite ready to win that cup, but they might not be that far off as some fans may think. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day. And of course, don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you agree with my thoughts there in saying that adding like Gavrikov and Provorov, that this team can be a whole lot better next season? Let me know your thoughts. And also, do you want to see a guy like Avrakova Provorov added in? Do you want to see it be someone else, like an Ekblad possibly, or a Matt Grzelcyk? There are some other kind of decent defensemen that are going to become available as well. Or do you want to see it be a trade? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.